So, you want to play Sim? Now, Sim, I'm sure you know, is the black sheep of the game modes. Wait, no, that's still Naval. Never mind. Anyway, of all the air game modes, it's the least played by far. Mostly due to how daunting it seems. While it is much tougher to play, especially in lower tiers, in higher tiers there are plenty of creature comforts to assist you, such as SAS, radars, HMDs, camera balls, and missiles. And with all these at top tier, it's pretty fun, actually. And trust me, it's a lot easier than it may seem. Equipment and controls. When it comes to flying in Sim, while it is certainly possible to fly with mouse and keyboard, I would certainly recommend getting a hands-on throttle and stick. Or hot ass. I personally use a Logitech X56, which, among other flight sticks, is in the mid to high range, price-wise. However, if you are like me and have expendable income due to the fact that you have something called a job, or something more overrated such as having loving parents, however, I advise you be a bit smarter than me and do some research, because you can get a much better stick for the price, such as this and this. Although I do wish that force feedback and Hall effect sensors were more common at a cheaper price than Jesus fuck. And as someone who works in the aerospace industry and makes buttons for hot asses that go in actual planes and have funny names like missile bomb release button, I can say that the buttons on the hot asses you can buy should be of a much better quality, like the ones on actual planes, which are very satisfying. Anyway, when it comes to controls, you can customise your binds to whatever you feel comfortable with. Here are some of my binds. Unfortunately, War Thunder doesn't currently support split throttle access, so I have my left throttle set to wing sweep angle and VTOL nozzle angle, as I tend to need quicker access to it than using one of my rotary encoders. As you can see, I have most of my radar binds on my stick. With this hat, up is lock, left is mode switch, and right is to turn it off. And I can use the small stick to angle the radar dish up, down, left and right. You may also notice that I still have my keyboard here. Well, I still need it as there are too many binds to bind to this stick. For example, I still have some of my leftover radar binds, such as my switch between IRST and radar button, my scanning angle and distance buttons, and you of course still need your mouse for navigating the menus and for using any camera pods. However, for looking around the cockpit, I still use this small stick here with my throttle handle. I also occasionally use my Valve Index to play in VR, however it can get pretty tiring at times for long periods. More so for me since I haven't played VR for such a while. As a side note, I'm unsure if VR headsets can be used to aim your helicopter guns yet. Journalist in Iraq, POV. Anywho, before you use your flight stick, I would highly recommend giving your stick a jiggle. No, I'm being serious. As first, you need to adjust your dead zones to make sure that the backlash on your flight stick won't give any false inputs. Once you have done this, allow me to show you one of the most important buttons for all of top tier. The change SAS modes key. I use insert for whatever reason. Now, this is a make or break for some planes. Like planes with large deltas such as the Kafir, Drake and etc., which can become wildly uncontrollable and bleed away all of your speed. Basically, the way how SAS works is it smooths out your control inputs, such as instead of say a rapid pitch up, it begins more gradually. You may notice as well that without damping on, the plane may naturally pitch up or down because of its lift. Damping also helps to counteract this. It is not necessarily an AOA or G limiter, although switching to manual does remove these limits. However, it does limit your authority, such that you can't be at full deflection on all your control surfaces. The amount of deflection you actually have varies on plane by plane, as different planes handle this differently. There is also another SAS mode named automatic leveling. This also varies depending on the plane, anywhere from being normal damping to automatically rolling to level flight, and some, notably the Su-25 and Su-39, heavily restricts roll authority as to limit turns to banking turns, and keeping the plane level with the horizon. This is great for bombing and also preventing the plane from naturally pitching up for when you're in the camera, which still happens even if you're in damping. You may find at times that there are certain situations you might want to turn off damping, such as intense turn fights, just to give you that extra authority you need. And a final side note for this section, War Thunder does have custom profiles for many common flight sticks, and if you need to change axes, you can go to the axes control page and click this button here, and then move the axis you wish to change, and it will automatically change it to that axis. Planes which are good for Sim. I'll briefly go over some of the planes you can choose to start your career in Sim with. I can't go into depth with every single one of these, so I'll just put the pros and cons with them, and just kind of summarise them. Otherwise this video will be twice as long, and I'm not going to write down the tech tree ones since I don't have every single tree, and I don't want to generalise that many planes purely off of second-hand information. As for tech tree planes that I have played in Sim, the F-16 was great, the bubble canopy is really nice to fly with, and the damping holds your hand and it's literally like you point the thing and it just goes. The F-14 I haven't played in a while, to be honest, but the F-14B is very nice to fly and feels much better in Sim than it does in Aerobase, since you have so much more distance to make full use of it. The MiG-29 has always been a favourite of mine. I usually use the IR versions of the R-27s, since I just use my radar to get IFF and then switch over to IRST to actually launch the things. A couple of the newer planes I don't have since I only started playing War Thunder again quite recently. One I haven't tried being the F-111. I don't have it, I haven't spoken to anyone who has it, but it can carry an unholy amount of ordnance. It has the missile approach warning system. It doesn't have IFF on its radar, but you are going to be nearly exclusively bombing it. I saw a guy in my lobby get about 25 tons of bombage with the thing, so it's probably not too bad for Sim. And the F-15 and Su-27s, I'm sure, towards the very top of the meta, but again, I don't have them. As to which of these premiums I would actually recommend buying, well, it's hands down the MiG-23ML. While it doesn't have a very good RWR at all, but its other benefits make it seem so much better than the F4S, which is the only other one I would reasonably recommend. Past that, I would recommend the A6E, as it's probably one of the best premium bombers at this tier. I'd advise just taking bombs and staying out of the way as much as possible, and you'll do fine. Just treat it gentle and don't try to dogfight with it. I've not flown the Laser M myself, nor the F1C, but if you want to grind out their respective trees, they are really the best premiums they have. If I were to get a plane for Germany, personally, I would get the Tornado more because I really like the plane than anything else. If you like bombing in Sim, love the Tornado, want to grind for Germany, and love throwing disposal income on the screen like me, then sure. Other than that, the Turkish F104 is actually pretty good at 10-3, instead of being forced to play at 11-0. So if you like seal clubbing at 10-3 and want Italy, then by all means. For Israel, the Kafir is very fun to use, though I recommend using it more to bomb bases due to its lack of radar, and it takes a bit of a deft hand to get used to the controls. The Draken is great, since unlike RRB, you don't have to contend with radar missiles as much, since you can just play 10-7 cap lobbies if you really want to. And the A10 and F5C, I just can't really recommend the A10 as much now since the A6E exists, even though it's just a lot nicer to fly, and it's just too slow and impractical at times to actually be useful. And if you really want the A10, then just use the A6E to grind out until you get the A10 late, because at least then you have IR-ATGMs. And the F5C, I just personally don't like flying it, since everyone else is more than supersonic at that tier, and the F5C just barely pushes past supersonic. And having no radar just sucks, really. J7D, not worth. Bomb with the A5 instead, since you have no IFF on your radar, which also has a short range, but you can't carry a viable amount of bombs without sacrificing all your missile pylons. And the F4EJ and F4J UK, just no. For the UK, buy the Civics or something. And Japan, I don't know if the Saber's any good, but there's no way it's worse than this pile of shit. The Su-39, I mean, I like it. You probably shouldn't get it, but you could always check out this video made by a certain someone if you want to get to know how to use it in Sim. When you get the hang of it, it's probably one of the most fun you can have in the game, period. Anyway, I think that's all the tier 7 premiums. Why me? The F20 is the first tier 8 premium introduced. It's the F5 with the brand new F110 engine you all know and love from the F16C and the F14B. I just don't even like this plane in general. We should have gotten the F16XL instead of this piece of shit, unless they're planning on reserving that for an event vehicle. Anyway, the F16 is... Anyway, F20 is die F16. Actually, no, it's worse. F16 Life. If anyone else remembers Coke Life, it was supposed to be a healthier version, but it had a shit aftertaste, and it was just worse than Diet Coke or something. Just, radar's fine, but you have to sacrifice 2 9Ls for a single sparrow, for fuck's sake. Awareness and Avionics. Now you have your control set and your plane chosen, I would recommend first going to a test flight or a custom mission set to Sim and get used to the controls. So at this point you may want to adjust your dead zones and multipliers, etc. Now that you're in the cockpit, you'll realise one of the key reasons why it seems like so many Sim players are shit. They can't see anything. One of the more atrocious cockpits I've seen is the one with a funny NATO reporting name YouTube won't let me say, and the Draken. It's the same for the Draken because I really like flying it. I love how unique the gauges are all around the cockpit with these linear mark number indicators and stuff, but just completely let down by the absolutely zero negative angle view you have on the gun sight. The closest are these two bits on the sides of the gun sight. Another particularly annoying one is the MiG-23. Oh, what's that? You are in a circle dogfight and the dude's above you? Well, too bad, because you have this giant ass strut going over it, and you can't look very far behind you. Alas, there are ways of improving your awareness as this is top tier and you have plenty of avionics that can assist you. First off is the Radar Warning Receiver, or RWR. It's probably one of your most useful instruments. There are other videos which explain what all the beeps and words mean. On the higher end systems which can tell you exactly what plane is pinging you, it could be invaluable in determining if there's any enemies in your general direction, if you can't spot them on your radar. Speaking of, radar will be your primary way of identifying other aircraft. If you've ever been flying a plane with radar in Air RB, you may have noticed this little line above a signal on your radar, but not have known what it means. There's an identification friend or foe marker, or IFF, meaning that this radar signature is a friendly. Just be warned, if a friendly pops chaff, the chaff will not appear as an IFF marker, and normal pulsed radar systems, which are the ones that just say search on the radar screen, are very susceptible to ground clutter, as with PDV, which is just pulse Doppler, but instead of the screen being arranged by angle and distance, is by angle and relative velocity. This does actually provide IFF, but the IFF indicator is at the very top of the screen, in line with the target marker, instead of only just above it, which can make reading it somewhat difficult. A couple of other odd modes include MTI, or moving target indication, which is in-game kind of a mix between normal pulsed and Doppler, but not pulsed Doppler, where it can both be chaffed and notched, and only functions near the ground. It may be reworked in the new update to make it so the radar has to be facing towards the ground in order to function. There are currently two main families of planes in the game that use MTI, the MiG-23 family and the F-1 City family. The MiG-23 also has an option that once you go higher than the MTI limit, LD kicks in. LD is look down. This is just the search mode pointing a few degrees down. Another mode which is not so common is GTM, which is currently found on the Scorpio 25 and 21, which is on the Su-39 and MiG-21 Bison respectively, which can be used to target ground targets. However, they have to be moving. For more information on this, I again refer you to my Su-39 video. Now in Sim, some planes don't have a full HUD that shows what planes you're locked onto. In order to find them, you're going to have to use these lines on the side of the scope. When you're not locked, you can see a small line. This line is your nose. The lines at the top and the bottom are the maximum angles your radar can point up and down. The exact angle is notated here. There is also a box between these lines. This area is where the radar is currently searching in its current search mode, and there's another line which shows the height sector is currently searching. If you disable constant radar elevation and bind the Q vertical radar tilt bind and the horizontal bind, you can move the dish up and down, left and right, to search certain areas without needing to move the nose of your plane. Some radars such as the MiG-29 only have limited angles they can look in, such as center, left or right. Be warned in TWS as it automatically locks to the height once target is found. This can be broken either by turning the radar off and back on again, or by moving the dish manually up or down. When you are locked, you will see this indicator. This is where the target is vertically. If you align this with your nose and the center of the radar display, you'll have the target dead ahead of you. Some planes also come equipped with what's called a C-scope. This is a separate radar. Instead of displaying the target along the axis of bearing and distance, it is instead bearing up, down, left and right. This is functionally identical to using the B-scope, but it is better to visualize. Radar isn't your only targeting system you have access to. Some planes in-game have IRST. This is currently only found on a handful of planes in-game. Outside the Soviet and Russian planes, only the F-8E and the J-35XS have this. Inside the Soviet countries, you have the MiG-23 family and all the MiG-29s and Su-27 variants in-game, and the Yak-141. All have IRST in various implementations. I went into a bit more detail on the IRST system on the Draken in that video, but since there are so many different versions, I'll go into detail on them here. The lowest grade of IRST system in the game is the one featured on the F-8E, which, using the name IRST, is a bit of a misnomer as you can search but you can't lock, and the IR missiles you have cannot be slaved by IRST. You also don't have an ACM unlike all the other systems. Next up is the systems on the J-35XS and the MiG-23. All of these systems have a full search and track with ACM, and all their IR missiles can be slaved with IRST, with the exception of the R-13. The later systems on the Yak-141, the MiG-29s and Su-27s include a laser rangefinder and other systems. This, instead of giving only bearing, also gives ranging and velocity vector, which allows the aircraft to flip between IRST and radar on the fly while maintaining a lock. The velocity vector also allows the plane to use air-to-air lead indicator. It does this passively, meaning it doesn't trigger any RWR. It may trigger LWS on helicopters, and if you launch an IR missile it will trigger more, which should be coming widespread in this update by son of a bitch. This was the exact moment when writing the script I discovered the update had dropped. Due to this, I have made an addendum chapter at the end of the video which will explain every change the update has brought relating to Sim. Anywho, further towards the top of top tier, you start to see aircraft with head-mounted display, or HMD. This allows you to slave your radar dish, IRST pipper or your IR missile seeker to your view. Once you see a target, press the lock button and it functions like ACM. Unlocks onto whatever target is in its view. On certain jets it also gives you readout elements similar to your HUD when you are looking away from your HUD. It's those last two things which somewhat irk me about HMD. I wish that HMD could detect IFF if it were pointed at a friendly, as if it was searching that tiny area. And in order to get readouts you have to have HMD turned on, so you can't have your radar operating normally. It's for these two reasons why I rarely use it in Sim, only typically using it when dogfighting. Game mechanics. Sim functions much differently from air realistic battles. In AirRB the matchmaking can throw you anywhere from a full up tier to a full down tier. In Sim there are set brackets that rotate every other day or so. On screen are the current brackets. If you have a large pool of planes across many BRs like me, then you may want to play at the caps of each BR, like playing the MiG-23ML when it's 11.0 cap or the Su-39 when it's 11.3 cap. When you load into your first game you'll find that you have multiple runways, which, side note, I honestly think that should be added to AirRB as it might help alleviate some of the problems with AirRB, such as everyone always converging in the middle of the map to fight. You also notice that you can use as many planes as you have silver lions for. Be warned, you must make all your loadout presets beforehand. Gaijin, could you change this please, because it's just quite annoying, sorry, but yeah. Once you've selected your plane and loadout, you will load in to notice that you're in cockpit view with your engine off. It's at this point you will notice on the map there are several objectives. These replenish throughout the match. You may need to scale down your UI to see all of them, but it involves bombing targets, air domination capture zones, air patrols, and depending on the map, destroying aircraft carriers and ships. When you are in the air, you will notice there's a couple of planes circling over your runway which don't have a marker. But when you get closer, you'll notice that a blue marker eventually appears at under a kilometre or so. This is one of the major mechanics in Sim. You cannot know what planes are friendly or not from any useful distance. This is why I put so much emphasis on planes with no IFF. It requires you to manually identify them by flying up to them very close. The only other way is to recognise the plane itself from the shape of its silhouette. Don't worry if you can't do this straight away, you will learn with experience, but if you aren't 100% sure you should always double check manually, especially if it's a plane that are used by multiple countries like the F-16. And enemies have no markers at all, so bear that in mind. As for how rewards are calculated, instead of getting rewards on each kill you get, or how much you have bombed a base or destroyed a ground target, every action you do fills up an invisible activity meter. The percentage this meter is filled is the amount of the plane's max reward you are going to be getting in a 15-minute interval. The max SL rewards can be found by going to the tech tree and selecting Sim on the BR mode and hovering over the plane. Note that the RB action rewards percentage are not the same as the Sim action rewards percentage. The amount you get from playing Sim has decreased dramatically over the years due to exploits with people just joining and having the AFK bot just fly around. Even now the rewards are quite decent, but is probably due a buff considering some of the rewards buff that RB has had with the skill bonuses. However, I still believe that Sim is probably the best way to get the most out of a booster, as in Sim it lasts a full 30 minutes. If you have a booster with multiple uses, then one use will be consumed every 30 minutes. It's a lot easier to be consistent in Sim since you aren't limited by lives as in RB, where one teammate firing off a missile or a smokeless missile from the enemy can end the booster straight away before you get any kills. When you are in the air, you can complete these objectives over and over, usually after a capture point is captured. If it's over ground, a ground battle will spawn. You will also notice that runways have 4 squares around them. These are targets on the runway. You can find them by cycling through the bomb targets markers menu. What each of them do is, if damaged or destroyed, it will affect the airfield's ability to repair, refuel and rearm planes that land on it. Addendum. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Seek and Destroy update released during the script's writing, so I'll quickly go over some of the changes, as this is a lot easier than completely rewriting the script from start to finish. First off, we have some new premiums. In top tier we have the MiG-21 Bison from India in the Blighty tree, and I won't lie, it doesn't look too bad in comparison to the F-20 as you get the R-27s, which, while they aren't the extended range versions, they are still very good. It also gets the R-73E, which is the export variant of the R-73, which I just learned is supposed to have a couple extra degrees in off-bore sight capability than the standard R-73. Anyway, I'm yammering. While it only has 4 missiles, those are very good missiles. The radar is great, unlike the F-20 it has HMD, or should I say HMS as they are now calling it. It doesn't say how many data link channels it has, I'm assuming 1 or 2, as the Aviate-B Plus doesn't list its capability either, so it should be fine with using data link on your R-27Rs. While the radar does have GTM, it's not of much use as you can only use CAB 500s, and you have to sacrifice a missile pylon for them. I would probably take this plane over the F4J UK. We also have the AMX Studio Ghibli. Yeah, I'm a fucking shit writer, aren't I? Anyway, Brazil plane. It has its very own homegrown missiles called the Piranha. They seem somewhat capable with 45 Gs of pull. The only issue you may have with them is they may lack in range somewhat. Possibly a bit more range than a Magic 2. However, I'm sure you can send someone's spirit away. You have a great loadout when it comes to ground attack, all around great, except for no ATGMs. Unsure which I would prefer for grinding Italy, probably the F104 if I were using it specifically for sim. Speaking of ATGMs, the A6E now finally has them. It has the Skipper laser guided missile. A laser ATGM is somewhat of a rare sight for the US tree, unsure if the game classifies it as a guided bomb or not, since in real life it is a bomb. It says missile in game. The reason I'm curious is the get a kill with a guided bomb from 20 kilometers away achievement, and I'm curious as to if this counts or not, since the KH-29T doesn't count, which I find quite annoying since they both have massive warheads that are bigger than the PGM 500s. Anyway, pretty much does it for the amendments. I think that's pretty much it. I can't think of anything else. So yeah, thanks for you. Oh yeah, I got to address the actively homing elephant in the room. So of course they added active radar homing missiles in game. They also did this whilst also lowering what's called the multipath height. Now, you may have heard of this, spoken by a couple of other content creators, which basically what it means is when radars try and lock onto something close to the ground reflections can influence the radar and make it think that the target is lower than it actually is. Instead of modelling this independently for every single radar in the game, they have the same height applied to every radar, and they took this height and dropped it from 100 meters down to 60. Could have been worse, it was 50 in the dev server. So I guess silver lining, yeah. Well, this means that even if you are flying under the 60 meters off the ground, it is now even harder to spoof the radar, and so the missile before would have landed far enough away not to hurt you. Now instead it will probably get close enough to do some serious damage, and I believe the faster the closing speed, the worse this effect is. So notching on the ground is probably one of the better ways of avoiding them. This is obviously since in post-upload the radar is able to filter out even better from the ground terrain. When it comes to air RB, I've just kind of given up on flying low and instead flying a bit higher, since it won't make that much difference anyway. Just always be prepared to notch and chaff the missiles away, which notching these new active radar homing missiles aren't as hard as I thought it was going to be. Also, the F-14 is finally great again, as the Phoenix is still the longest range active radar homing missile in the game. I usually take 6 Phoenixes and 2 9Ls. I think the B is a lot more worth it, as you get the P is stored in the ball pods, and the engines, which are more suited towards lowish altitudes, I believe. Unsure if I mentioned this earlier or not, but its nose camera is a nice touch if you want to have a look about when you're flying in sim. It's just a nice to have thing. Next up is Belgium now exists for the first time in its history, and the Dutch. Top tier wise, they get a Mirage, an F104G, and 2 Block 15 F-16s, one earlier variant and an MLU variant. The earlier variant has mostly the same loadouts as the American Block 10 with 2 additions, one being that it can have 9Ms, the other being that it has countermeasure pods that can be put onto any of the bombs, but not the missiles for some reason. It also has the US Block 15 radar that has the capability to use semi-active missiles, but doesn't have any Sparrows. The MLU variant, while it does have the same AN APG 66V3 as the Taiwan Block 20, it is not a Block 20. It has ostensibly the same loadout as the F-16C with AMRAAMs, 120 countermeasures at stock, with yet again the option to have countermeasure pods with bombs. Unlike the F-16C, since it's a Block 15, it doesn't have the F-110 engine and has a Lantern pod instead of a Lightning II pod. But this aircraft is gifted with not 1, but 2 RWRs for some reason. Bizarre. It is also one of only 6 planes that I know of in-game that has missile approach warning system. 4 of them are in the French tree. On the Mirage 2K, CS5, 5F and DR1, and on this Belgian plane. The Chinese J11A and the F111A in the American tree also has it. Before this update it was just the F111 that had it in-game. But what is odd though is, unlike most of the others, judging by the X-ray view, it has missile approach warning system stock, but also has a modification in the modifications tab for it. I'm assuming, like it having 2 RWRs, that this is a bug and they haven't fixed it because probably no one currently has the plane as I'm writing this. If you're not sure why I'm on about missile approach warning system so much, it's that because now we have smokeless missiles in sim, it's going to be nigh impossible to know if someone's fired a missile at you. MAWS should help detect even those and respond to them with flares, which is a great thing really, because I've faced them a couple of times and they're not fun to come against. And oh yeah, one last thing, you can now change which CMs you can pop, so that's quite good. and you can have the HMS HUD without having to have HMS turned on, which is, thank you Gaijin, very good for sim. The audio you've just heard is well over a month old now, and for that I apologise. As I mentioned in the community post in the short, right about a week after I recorded the voiceover for this video, I went on holiday to the land of the so-called free. And as of editing this video, it's been well over a month since I returned. In this time, another update changed that finally decompressed some of the BRs. Luckily, it seems these BR changes has not affected what I said all too much, as for the most part they just spread the BRs across a wider range. Luckily, since I didn't start the editing on this video till about mid-August or so, I didn't have to go back and change all the BRs for the planes listed earlier in the video. Anyway, back to making excuses for myself. More recently, I've been trying to knuckle down on work in college since I'm coming to the end of my college term, and so I haven't been focused on making videos for a while, so yeah. But since I'm coming to the end of it, that means that I should have a lot more free time coming up, and I should hope to get back to making more and more videos soon. I mean, it's not like I'm short on ideas. I've written down an absolute shitload of scripts for me to eventually get to, but it's more about the actually getting around to, you know, filming and voicing, and the hardest part is of course editing, because luckily you don't hear a lot of it, but I fumble a lot when I speak doing these voiceovers, and usually it takes a good couple of takes before I actually get it right, so yeah. I don't know which video I'm going to try and do next, but I've got a couple I've been working on for months on end using. One of them's a 3D printing video that's like literally is an upcycled script from like 2 years ago or something like that. So the next video might be a War Thunder video, might not be a War Thunder video, I'm not sure. Depends on if I get time to actually shoot the video. Originally, the original script from 2 years ago was just the water-cooled 3D printer part, but now it's more becoming loads of other things are kind of getting into it, because I realised I probably couldn't fill an entire video with just that. And hopefully you may have noticed that the video has a noticeably higher quality to the audio in it, because I've figured out how to use the audio normalization a lot better now. So and unlike my previous video, the Su-39 video, I forgot to put a lot of visual aids in that, and the stuff that I in general didn't like how that video turned out, and so I hope this one turned out a lot better. And so yes, as I said, I mumble, and so yes, as I said, I keep on tripping over my words and all that kind of stuff. And so probably the only pain point with this video is the voiceover itself, which I'm trying to fix, but so yeah, only I could make something as simple as reading off a bloody script look fucking impossible. Anyway, now that the apologies are done, I hope you really enjoyed this video, and for frame reference, the script alone was like 7,500 words or so across 12 pages, and it took me like 3 hours for the voiceover, so I hope that I got most of what I said right. However, I haven't played War Thunder a huge amount since I got back from America, so and instead I've been wasting my time playing Kerbal Space Program and Minecraft, instead doing the more productive shit like cleaning my room, finishing this video, or doing my college work as well, which is yep, probably should be doing that, but you know. So if you like this video, then give it a like, please, maybe. If you didn't like it, then leave a dislike and leave a comment saying that what I got wrong. And like my previous videos, there'll be a pinned comment with any amendments that have been made over the time since the video was made. Knowing my luck, the trailer for the next update will release right after I make this video, so I'm going to have to really make my amendments quite quickly. No, my luck, the trailer for the next update will release right after this video, just like what happened with the J35XS video, so hoping it doesn't, but... And if you like this video, and you want to check out some other videos, please do consider, of course, subscribing. And if you like this video and some of my other videos, then of course please do consider subscribing, as I'm hoping to get 500 subscribers pretty soonish, because once I get that, then hopefully I can join the Gaijin content creator program, and then that means that I have access to more planes that I can make more reviews on. So yeah. And so with that, I thank you for your time that you have taken to watch this video, and yeah, ta-ta. Gaijin, please give the Su-39 R77s, it would be so fucking funny.